Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we're going to be going over a new resource that just came out pretty much on Victory Road. So pretty much a whole bunch of teams. This is great for the BDSP VGC scene. I mean, if you look, there's so many teams. What I wanted to do is I wanted to go through each of these teams individually and kind of give you guys my opinions on them, which ones I think are the better ones to use, and which are the ones I'd probably avoid unless like you're just trying to have fun with it. Obviously, if you're just trying to have fun, it doesn't matter. You can use anything, right? But just from my personal opinion, like looking through the teams, which I think are the better ones and which I think could be changed. And if there are any potential changes I think that could potentially make the teams better, I'll also be discussing that as well. Obviously, credit to all the creators and Victory Road for this resource. I'll have Victory Road, this like sample like link below, so you guys can get access to a bunch of other teams. A couple of my teams are on here as well, so figured extend the courtesy anyways, right? But yeah, pretty much looking over at this, you'll notice that, you know, it's just kind of giving you the basic, like, oh yeah, cool teams practice with online, battle simulators, all that stuff. But these are basically just a bunch of teams that'll kind of allow people to just get into the scene, which I think is really good, because they'll just kind of let you, you know, just kind of play the game. So we're going to start from the top down. So first team that I wanted to show off, well, I guess it's mine, right? I'd already talked about this. I do think the team's pretty good. That being said, it is still early in the format when this was made, right? So there are probably a couple changes that can be made going into the next couple of, you know, like tournaments or like just events for this game. Pretty much, if you look over here, you'll see that the team is Hitmontop, Heatran, Tyranitar, Gardevoir, Mamoswine, and Zapdos. I'll have the video linked below as well if you guys are interested in seeing a video on any of these teams that I particularly made. Also, too, if you go on the site, the link's like literally there to the videos, but I'll make sure to, include that. But, and maybe I'll like leave it up here somewhere in the video, I don't know. But yeah. If I don't do that, then I'll be in the description. But pretty much this team was pretty much wanting to use the synergy between Scarf Gardevoir's telepathy and Discharge and Earthquake with Mamoswine. By the way, quick thing before we continue getting this team, Sierra's behind me. She just got her OLED switch. She's like opening it like a kid on Christmas. Really cold. Are you sure it's okay? That's probably fine. Yeah, you'll be fine. I'll warm up. It's frozen. Yeah, it was like outside. The package was outside. But yeah. So pretty much with this team, it was just built around the synergy between spread moves and then having Wide Guard with Hitmontop for the two partners that didn't like it too much, and then having that Fake Out Pressure. Now, one change I would make to this team is using a Zap Plate Zapdos and changing Hyper Beam to Roost, because I do think that Zapdos having access to Roost is actually really nice. Now, besides that, I do think the team's pretty well-rounded, and I definitely would recommend giving it a shot. I do think in terms of its complexity to use, it's kind of in the middle. You know, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the more offensive options, but, like, also you have, like, enough defensive tools with, like, Hitmontop, you know, Heatran and Tyranitar. So, definitely a cool team. I think that it's something that would definitely do well if you were to use it in tournament. You just got to kind of get acquainted with it. I would definitely change the Zapdos to Zap Plate, though, and potentially make it a little bit bulkier using the Zapdos spread that I had on the most recent team I had up on my channel, which you can check that video out as well as the Christmas tournament team or whatever. But yeah, going down to this team, so Kakunaka's team, I actually do think it's a pretty cool team. I would probably make a couple changes to it that I think would suit the team a bit better. That being said, overall, I think the team is fine. Same thing here. I really like Zap Plate over that. I do think that Gardevoir should be carrying Energy Ball on this team because that's a good way to break Gastrodon. Now, with the rest of the team, the main thing that you're going to see is that obviously it's early format, right? So there are certain things that I think can be refined a little bit more. I think having bulk on your Gardevoir is usually really nice because it kind of allows you to, like, you know, actually sit there and take the hits a bit better. But yeah, it's just a nicer option. And then also here, if we look over here, you know, obviously Gyarados with the Lumberry being able to set up. You can go for Waterfalls, you can go for Crunch. I might prefer Ice Fang over Crunch, but that's also preference. I'm not too sure about Taunt. It might have just been a sub Trick Room on this team. Also not too sure about that. Also, the spreads are kind of like 252, 252 for the most part, so they probably could be refined a little bit. But for the most part, I'd say the team is pretty solid overall, right? Like, it's pretty straightforward with the synergy. You have Discharge next to Pachirisu, which is really good into your rain matchup. You can pretty much set up Dragon Dance next to Pachirisu, clicking Follow Me, or like going offensive, where you can do the Earthquake plus Dazzling Gleam or like Moonblast, whatever you want. And yeah, it's just like the Disquake kind of core, and then you have like the Pachirisu for support redirection. Tyranitar to kind of balance out the team, give you something to break Cresselia, and then Gyarados giving you another pivot. If I were to make a couple changes, probably would change this to Ice Fang and maybe Protect, depending on what Taunt's used for. making the Pachirisu spread a little bit more general bulk. Giving Tyranitar Lumberry, I don't think Chopley is that necessary on it. And then potentially making it a bit more bulky, but like I think being offensive in this format's fine with Tyranitar, honestly. And then Chomp is fine. I think Sash is actually a pretty decent item on it. I think it's kind of being slept on. I think you want Sash, White Herb, or Life Orb on Chomp. I don't think any of the other items are that great. I don't think Yachi Chomp is that good. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that team, and kind of my thoughts on it. I think it's pretty solid. I'd probably give it like, I'd give it a, I don't know if I'd give it a medium in difficulty. It's one of those teams that's like very easy to play, but hard to master, if that makes sense. Like the combinations are very straight up, right? Like they're not too difficult, but like the actual, like reaching the highest level of play with that team seems like it'd be a little trickier, right? But yeah. So next team is Torviv's team. I had actually played this during Swiss. I think it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. I'd say it's pretty solid. The one thing I'd probably, it's like, I mean, the Gastro looks fine, right? Like it's pretty solid with bulk. I mean, you have that same core of like Tyranitar, Gastrodon, Arcanine, and then Scizor, right? And like when you have a core like that, it's very hard for it to go wrong. The speed investment in the Scizor is actually really nice. Personally, I like special defense of my Scizors a bit more. But I understand the logic of just running speed and like just being full invested into attack. I mean, you're just doing as much damage as possible, so I think it's fine. It's more so preferencing. I'm very interested about the Specs Raikou. I almost prefer screen still on Raikou, but I understand the logic between that. Also, too, I think that with the Tangrowth, the spread that Torviv ran was like fine. I personally just prefer running Calm on Tangrowth and just having a max invested into special defense, but obviously it's mostly a preference thing. But yeah, I'd say overall you can go for like pretty straightforward options here, and it's not too difficult to play. I mean, you have that straight up option of being more offensive, going for Dragon Dance with Tyranitar, dealing damage. You can Wisp with Arcanine, you can kind of be disruptive there. You know, you have Gastro to just kind of play a bit of a bulkier game. I think this team is really good for beginners, and I think it's one of those examples of a team that's like medium difficulty, but it will challenge you to learn the game in a more constructive way. So I do think this team particularly would be a really good team to actually work with. There are a couple weaknesses I can notice. I mean, you don't have any ground resist, so Earthquake spam's kind of decent into you. Obviously with the exception of like Gastro and like maybe Scizor being able to take the hits, but it's still kind of annoying in some cases. So yeah, that's just one thing I'd be careful of. Also, Mamoswine looks a little bit scary for this team, so definitely worth noting. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this specific team. So now we're going to go into this. Pretty much standard rain team. Nothing too special about it. I mean, it does have Reflect, right? It has a Citrus Berry Raikou, which is really interesting. Alright guys, I'm just going to tell you. If any rain team has Scald on it, it is suboptimal. You always run Hydro Pump, and here's why. I don't care that Scald has a 30% burn chance. Why would you burn something when you can just nuke it? Like, just nuke it with Hydro Pump and get it out of the way. Like, it's like the value, right? Like, okay, sure, you can miss Hydro Pump, right? But, like, if you have only one inaccurate move on your team, it's so much more worth it to just have the guaranteed KO with Hydro Pump. Because, like, if you have to hit something twice with Scald to kill it, that's the same thing as missing Hydro Pump once and then killing it on the second time, right? So it's just better. I really do think Scald, or what's it called? Hydro Pump is like really crazy and it's just a super good move to utilize. So I definitely do that. The Ludicolo bulk's interesting. I'd probably make Ludi a bit faster. I'm not too much of a fan of like super slow Ludicolo, but it kind of depends on your preference if you don't care about being outsped. I do like having a little bit of speed in the Ludicolo. The Latios is interesting. I do think Calm Mind has some potential, but I almost feel like if you're using a Calm Mind bulky set, you might as well be using a Latios, because Latios kind of benefits off of the immediate pressure with like offense, right? And because you're going to be setting up anyways, and that's how you're going to be getting that damage done, you might as well be using Latios to have that extra bulk to kind of go along with your setup. Rest of the team, I really like Safeguard Arcanine. I think that's a nice touch. Also, seeing how defensive it is, that's really interesting. I'd say that's probably fine. The one thing I'd probably recommend is changing the Scizor to Metal Coat. 2 seconds, guys. Oh my god, I was just... I'm sorry, babe. If you guys don't know why I muted, I was like, Sierra, can you just be a little bit quieter with your present opening?
You said some really mean things to me.
I did not say any mean thing. I was nice about it. Anyway, so then my stars team over here, yeah, I would definitely change this to metal coat. I don't think there's any reason to do that. Also, careful scissor, not the play. Run adamant, in my opinion. Besides that, though, I'd say this is a pretty good starter team for anyone. I don't see how this could be a problem. I'm kind of curious about the CV spread. I feel like it might be able to be a bit better. Also, I like Screens Raikou better, but that's more so a preference thing. But I do think Screens might be better overall on this Raikou, but you can even run Magnet, maybe. But yeah, I think overall the concept of the team is like, it works well enough, you know? Okay, so next team. My stars team. To be honest, probably did a little bit better as well because a lot of people weren't prepared for it. I feel like if you were to use this team now, you would probably get bodied by a player who like really knew what they were doing. Mostly because like Zapdos specifically goes into 3 of these mons, and like there are a lot of Zapdos like ground cores here, and then you have like a ground type that can deal with most. I think the Shedinja next to like move spam is kind of cute, and then you have Shedinja also with rain. In my opinion though, I think this might be kind of leaning into the little too gimmicky side of things. Also, this team doesn't really have great counterplay into opposing Scizor. Opposing Scizor actually gives this team a lot of trouble. You'd have Hydro Pump to snipe it, but like it's still not great. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to like get nailed. What's it called? By an X Scissor on a swap in, or like have nothing to hit it after. And there's no like coverage fire moves on here, so I'd probably give this team like, it's probably fun, but I definitely wouldn't recommend using this in like a tournament probably. Unless like you're really comfortable with the team and maybe make a few changes to adjust for the scissor weakness. This is pretty much almost the standard Lucamere Ramirez team. He's pretty much like a solid player. He got #1 on ladder with this team. With this team specifically, it's just very centered around you playing optimally and not giving your opponent many ways to kind of win the game. Now, obviously, this is Pink Sylvie's version of the team, where there are a couple changes that I agree with and a couple that I don't. So, first off, Tyranitar, it's missing an EV, but also, too, I think you can have a more optimized spread. I have a lot of Lumberry T-Tar spreads on a lot of my other teams, so you can just kind of yoink one from there. I think having a little bit of bulk in Lumberry T-Tar is nice, especially on this team, where, like, your team kind of supports the bulk. I do really still prefer the screen set on Raikou on this team, because I do think it kind of allows you to get that freer setup with Tyranitar and Scizor and be mitigating the damage coming out from the opponents. Helping Hand over Protect on Arcanine 2 isn't something I'm necessarily totally on board with. If I were going to replace anything, I'd probably replace Snarl with Helping Hand. Also, the spread can probably be a bit bulkier to kind of take some hits a bit better, right? Latios is running Surf, so it can basically boost a Gastrodon next to it. While it's cute, I would probably just put Ice Beam over Surf. I think the getting more damage with Ice Beam's nice. You can justify Surf. I think that one's a little bit more up in the air, but I'd probably prefer Ice Beam just to kind of snipe certain things without having to use up my Draco Meteor. For example, the quad weak Dragon types, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the main thing. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward team, right? The most things you can really optimize are going to be the EVs and like the some of the items and movesets, right? The Scissor should be Metal Coat, I think. All Scissors should be running Metal Coat or Akaberry, in my opinion. I don't think you run Lumberry on it. I think that's kind of a waste. I think that Akaberry and I think that Metal Coat are best. The only reason why you'd run Akaberry is if you have a team that doesn't have Rain. If you have Rain, you should be running Metal Coat all the time. The boosted Bullet Punch is like actually crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on team. I mean, we're gonna see a lot of these kind of teams. These definitely a good team if you're a beginner, but I'm gonna also go over this version of the team, and I think this version of the team's a bit better. But yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to it. So here's Travis's team. Travis' team it's pretty much your standard Rain team. You have like Politoed, Ludicolo, Scizor. Now there are a couple variations with this team that I don't necessarily agree with. I think that you want Citrus Berry on the Politoed for sure. I think that you need the Life Orb always on the Ludicolo. You should never not be running Life Orb on Ludicolo because you need that extra damage to, like pretty much to actually be pressuring with the Rain mode, right? If you don't have Life Orb, you're not going to be getting all the KOs you need, and you're going to be missing a lot of KOs. Also, too, Scizor should be using Metal Coat, in my opinion. As I mentioned, you have Rain already to support the team. Lumberry usually doesn't come into play too much because Arcanine's not really going to be doing too much work anyways versus your team, right? and Metal Coat's going to allow you to pressure things that pressure rain a bit better. Garchomp, as I mentioned, like I don't really like Yachi Berry on it. I would probably prefer like White Herb, mostly because White Herb kind of prevents you from being intimidated on swapping, and the Life Orb is already being used up on the Ludicolo with the supposed changes, right? So that makes sense. Also, I'm not a big fan of Magnet Raikou. If he was running Magnet, he probably should have just had Thunder anyways, if you were going to do that set. But also, too, I think that if you're going to do any set that's off of the standard Raikou, you go Specs or maybe Leftovers Calm Mind. But I don't think Leftovers Calm Mind is necessarily the best. I think that on this specific team, you'd benefit off of Specs for immediate offense or Screens. If you don't want to play like a bulkier game, then you would do Specs, right? If you want to play a bit of a bulkier game, then having Screens would make sense. Because then you have the core of like Raikou, Togekiss, Garchomp, and Scizor. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. Also, too, I'm not too sold on the Babiri Berry on the Togekiss. It is good for Scizor. I really like Flamethrower. I think that's a really nice touch on the team. I would probably recommend changing Air Slash off because you're not really, using Air Slash too much. Besides, like, maybe into, like, Breloom or, like, one of the Rain, like, Mons. But then that's what your own Rain mode and, like, Raikou's for, right? And even your own Scizor. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the team overall. I think overall it's, like, fine. I probably would prefer White Herb on the Chomp. Also, maybe even Dragon Claw over Swords Dance. Swords Dance Chomp is weird. Like, it feels like in this format you don't get many free turns, like, at that Swords Dance setup you want all the time, where you used to be able to in other formats. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. It's like a standard. Like, these Rain teams are pretty standard. I mean, you can kind of do well with any team that has Politoed, Ludicolo, Scizor on it. If you play it well enough, or specifically Politoed, Ludicolo, Scizor, Raikou, and then filler. Just kind of depends. Because, like, all Rain teams have, like, kind of the base, right? It's, like, the two Rain pair, the Steel type and Scizor, and then the Electric type, right? So, yeah. Then we have Ramirez's team. So this one is the one that I would say is pretty much the epitome of, like, what a good one would be. Now, couple things. Teacher spread, it probably would benefit from being, like, adamant bulky, but that's just my preference. I personally prefer it being a little bit more offensive because you can actually deal a bit more damage. Now, the benefit of Jolly is that you're going to be outspeeding stuff like Raikou, I believe. Let me double check on that, but I'm pretty sure you do outspeed Raikou with Jolly, right? And, like, you obviously are outspeeding other Tyrannitars. I haven't found that to be too important majority of the time. However, like, some people do prefer it, right? Because let's do this. Jolly. Yeah, you outspeed Raikou with this, right? Personally, I don't really care about outspeeding Raikou. I prefer the Adamant Tyrannitars that just outspeed, like, all the base 100s and then tie with Garchomp. That's fine. Because you're able to do more damage and you can invest a little bit more in the bulk that way. But obviously, it's a bit more preference. Scizor, too. Scizor having special defense bulk is kind of up to you and depends on your team. The one thing I think this team does well is it has, like, those defensive options with, like, screens. I personally prefer to have Light Screen over the Volt Switch. I know Volt Switch obviously gives you some pivoting, but I just think, like, Light Screen is really nice. Also, too, like, the screens plus, like, Arcanine is really nice. Now, a couple things. The spreads can probably be optimized a little bit more on some of the Mons. But majority, like, I think majority of the time what this team struggles with is a new Cresselia build that can kind of give this team some trouble, right? Because this team, like, it has decent setup power, but, like, it can have trouble, like, breaking it, like, because it's, like, one of those teams that are, like, besides Latios and, like, Scizor or Tyranitar once they're set up, like, it takes time to get going, right? And if, like, a Gastrodon and Arcanine are on the field and you have something aggressive on the field, you can kind of counteract, like, the more defensive nature by just, like, stacking up damage every single turn. That being said, if it's a good player, obviously it's going to be different. But I'd say this is one of those teams with, like, a high, like, if you play it a lot and you're really good with it, it's going to be a good team, but also it can give you trouble if, like, you're not playing it properly, right? I'd give this team, I'd say it's pretty good overall. I think that now that we've kind of progressed into format a little, it probably could use some form of an update. But, yeah, I think overall it's, like, fine. It's not bad. Okay, so those are the actual Victor Road teams that we went over. Now we're going to go into these teams. I apologize if this video is going to be a bit long, but, like, it's better to kind of do it in depth than just kind of sell it short and not give you guys full information. So next team here is Graham's team. The Graham's teams are weird to me, right? I personally, like, they don't look like something I'd use. But then I see Graham play it, and I'm like, oh, it's not that bad, right? That being said, there are a couple changes that would make the team immediately, right? For me personally, I'd probably be changing this to Hydro Pump so you can get some extra damage. Also, the Ludicolo is like right off of the special attacking bump, specifically with the EV spread. I don't think it's bad to be like max, max speed or whatever, but you should be at least reaching so you get the extra stat point, right? Specifically what I'm talking about here, if you look, right? Ludicolo, right? You are modest. This, what was he? He was like this, right? Yeah, he's 220. If you just invest like 16 more EVs, you'll get like 3 extra stat points out of it instead of 2, right? So kind of beneficial if you're already going to do that. Also, Ludicolo just being as close to max as possible is just nice, in my opinion. But yeah. I think Manual Rain is kind of a cute idea. I'm not so sure about Snorlax in the format. I think Snorlax kind of sucks, personally. I think Bandlax is the only Lax I've seen that's actually been kind of decent. Because Snorlax can take too long to get going sometimes, in my opinion. And because Graham Snorlax doesn't have, like, lefties, it can also particularly struggle if, like, it gets out damaged really early, right? The Latios set's interesting. I'd prefer Ice Beam over Shadow Ball. I'm assuming Shadow Ball is maybe for, like, Cresselia or something, but Cresselia looks like a demon for this team, honestly. Like, there is nothing on this team that can deal with Cresselia quickly. It looks really rough. Also, Double Roar, like, I guess it's, like, a cool idea to stop Trick Room, but you're really weak to Trick Room if it gets up, right? And, like, Roar is stopped for some reason, especially with, like, a one-shot, right? Now, if I were to probably change around the team a bit, I think this being screens would probably help the team a little bit. Or Specs, if you want to just lean into the offensive nature of the team. Arcanine's good here. I do think you probably want to change Roar to something else. I don't think you necessarily need Safeguard or Will-O-Wisp, depending on the team. Since this team is more offensive, I think you can justify close combat. Not too sure about, like, the EVs or whatever. I'm trying to avoid talking about the EVs too much, only because that would take up, like, way too much time. More so just want to talk about the movesets and stuff. I really think Snorlax is just not great on these kind of teams, or just like in general, right? Like you need Bandlax if you're trying to be offensive, I feel like, and that's better served on teams that kind of appreciate that extra form of offense, like to complement the special attackers, right? Also, Snorlax being the only physical attacker means this team is pretty susceptible to being walled, by like or special tanks, pretty much like Cresselia. That's why I say Cresselia is like really annoying to deal with on this team. If I were to give my honest opinion, personally, I wouldn't recommend this if you were like trying to play it in tournament play, because there are a lot of Cresselia teams that oversaturate the metagame. That being said, I do think you can play a team like this if you do make some changes around to help deal with Cresselia, right? Because I don't think Shadow Ball and Latios is enough, right? You're going to be struggling in that regard. Also, I want to clarify, I know I'm saying, like, I wouldn't recommend certain teams for tournament play. This isn't a diss on the people creating the teams or whatever. It's just personally, from my standpoint, whether or not I would use these teams and if I think they would have, like, better results in tournament play. Obviously, people can use whatever they want. Also, content creators, they make teams, and players make teams. It's not to, to diss on them. Like, they're, obviously for them, it may work better than, like, in my opinion. And that's just, like, kind of that, my personal opinion. That's why this video is my video, but yeah, so that's pretty much it for this team. Okay, so Mendez' team is like weird to me. This and this is really good. I think this is pretty weak. Also too, from having played versus Mando multiple times with multiple renditions of this team, I think this team does super great if your opponent does not know what they're doing into your team, or they don't have the information of the team. Now that the information of the team is public, it's actually a lot trickier to use, in my opinion. The main issue this team has is pretty much it's too linear with its offense with the main middle core to where it doesn't really have flexibility. So when I played versus Mando, I think I played Rain versus him, right? This team has a kind of poor Rain matchup, which is my main issue with it. I pretty much led Ludicolo Politoed, and by getting like a couple 50-50s right, I was able to win turn 1 twice. I think it was like turn 1 or turn 2 twice. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the team is bad. It just needs a little bit more respect for Rain, in my opinion. And Specs Rotom Wash is really easy to snipe with like a Life Orb Ludicolo. Also, too, if you have something like Zapdos plus Rain, like this gives us issues, or like Electric type plus Rain. Also, too, just Rain in general is like really strong, right? So you kind of need a bit more respect to it. I think having an Electric type that isn't particularly weak to Ludicolo might serve this team well. That being said, I think the number one thing on this team that's really good is the Weavile. The Weavile is super strong, and I think that that concept is something that is really strong into a lot of teams. I don't think people recognize how good Weavile is yet. So I definitely would recommend like checking that out more. Would I recommend using this team? Considering how much of a weakness I personally feel like it has to rain, I would recommend not unless you have changes on it to actually deal with rain. In my personal opinion. And that being said, I mean, you can always outplay. You know what I mean? Like not everyone's gonna play like well, or like perfectly. But like I feel like a really good rain player will be able to capitalize off of this team's lack of answers to it. I think he had changed the PZ when I played versus him, but I just kind of sniped it early. Okay, this team. So this is a rain team I made for one of my videos. I think overall this team is fine. You could change this to specs, or you could change this to light clay. The one thing that I think is worth noting is like this team is pretty much basic. Like this is as basic as you can get with a rain team. This is straight like you're starting out with the game. I'm trying to play the basics of the game and learn the basics of the game. This team is going to be good as long as you learn to play it well. However, the one thing you need to recognize is that if you play versus a good player and they know how to play versus rain, it is going to be reliant 100% on your play and not your team to be able to like beat them, if that makes sense. Right? Because like good players are going to know how to deal with rain. That being said, the Calm Mind Raikou is a really nice kind of complement to this team because you're able to set up. Also, too, the one thing to notice with this team is you're very special heavy, so capitalizing on your Scizor is going to be really important in your Arcanine to kind of offset that. But yeah, that's pretty much the main thing with this team. You have basically a core with two separate... Basically, rain teams are meant to have, like, two separate cores. To where you can pretty much lead, like, rain plus, like, two backmons that complement it well, or doing, like, a separate core of 4 that work well together, right? So that would be this part of the team. It's meant to be very straightforward and very, like, easy to play. You shouldn't have too much trouble using this. That being said, like, obviously it's, it's like one of those teams that, like, you need to be, like, if you're really good, like, you're going to be able to play well and pretty much beat anyone who, like, isn't playing as well in the game, or, like, you're confident you can outplay them. But if someone does know their rain matchups, like, then it's something you're going to have to be very, like, good about managing. You know what I mean? It's like with any team. It's just with some teams, like if someone has matchup unfamiliarity, like it can actually change it because it can give you an advantage because they don't know what to do specifically versus your team. But with rain teams, it's very much about like outplaying your opponent and using the fact that these are all good Pokemon and I can play better, as opposed to, oh, this is a team that's gonna catch my opponent off guard. So that's pretty much it. So Aaron's team is next. Let me take a look at this. I haven't actually seen this. Okay. Belly Drum Azumarill, Never Melt Ice, Glaceon with Obama Snow, Slowking. Okay, first thing that strikes out to me about this team, incredibly weak to Scizor. The main issue that you're gonna have with Scizor is Infernape's your main check to it, right? But like if you lose it, you're gonna have a lot of trouble versus it because you don't have much to actually stop it, right? Now, the one thing I will give this team credit for is it is really easy for like a beginner if you're able to like kind of do your easy matchup plans, right? Because with this team, you're leading like Slowking plus Staraptor, Final Gambit, Trick Room, going into like a Bomba Snow, clicking Blizzard spam, right? Very straightforward team. That being said, the one thing that you might have an issue with this team is pretty much since it's so linear. If your opponent knows how to counter it, you're going to be in big trouble. Also, if they can manage their Scizor well and not just give it up to your Infernape early. If a good player can preserve their Scizor from you and they can get it set up, it can give you huge issues for the rest of the game because you have you have basically 2 super effective hit. This is not a resist, it's neutral, right? Neutral, resisted, but then they just kill you with X's, or even though there's a Tanga Berry, right? I know there is Flamethrower on Slowbro, but there probably is ways to play around that, like potentially, like maybe a Fake Out, or like going for a Crunch, removing the Slowking with like Tyranitar, like one of their other options, and then actually, setting up the Scizor. Like, I think sometimes having coverage moves for certain Pokemon isn't just enough unless you're confident in your ability to outplay. That being said, though, this team is probably good at like a starter level because it kind of introduces like basic concepts in terms of like, oh, I'm setting up Trick Room plus Final Gambiting, I'm going for Blizzard spam, right? Or like trying to sweep in Trick Room, stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much my main thoughts on it. I'd probably say in terms of tournament play, it's going to struggle against like really good players that know how to manage their scissors properly. But in terms of like at a kind of easier beginner friendly standpoint to play, it's probably pretty straightforward, right? You just have to be very careful because scissor can give you a lot of issues if you're not using the team properly. But yep, that's pretty much it for this team. Wow, we have a lot of teams we're going through, man. This is crazy. But hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you guys have already made it this far, make sure to like, subscribe, support the video, drop a comment on your opinions, what you think. Obviously, these are just my opinions, so make sure to, talk about your opinions too and what you think is, better, worse. But yeah, so then this to my team, I got second place with this team. I got kind of robbed at first. I was like really close to getting first, and I just got like hell unlucky. I got like discharge, paralyzed, everything. But like besides that, this team's pretty good. It's Tyranitar, Heatran stuff, pretty straightforward. I think overall the team like was a very like it's like one of those teams that are like very basic in terms of like how they're constructed. So it's like the Dragon Fairy Steel core between Salamence, Azumarill, Heatran. And then you have the Fire, Water, Grass core with the Azumarill, Tangrowth, Heatran, right? And pretty much the idea is to have a lot of typing synergy between the two and balancing out the types, so you basically have a core where you can consistently swap Pokemon, right? Also, too, you'll notice that it fills out very like standard roles on the team, which is super nice for how the team plays. You have 3 physical attackers and you have 3 special attackers to balance it out, so you're not walled by either specific kind of like bulky Pokemon. The typings all don't overlap, which is really nice because you kind of get a wide variety of type coverage. And there is setup on the team, there's redirection on the team, and then there's also like extra bulk with like screens and intimidate, right? So kind of gives you a lot of options with this team, and I think it's a really cool team as a whole. Salamence being physical while using Earthquake is cool. One thing I'd recommend changing is probably adding Flamethrower over Fire Fang on this. Because that way you're not affected by Intimidate, and also too for stuff like Scissor that you're trying to snipe, like Flamethrower does the same thing, right? Like, because you're getting intimidated a lot of the time anyways, and it doesn't matter that you're Jolly, because Salamance's special attack is high enough where it just compensates for it anyways. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Not too complicated. I don't want to go too much into my own teams, only because, like, obviously, I mean, there is a bit of confirmation bias there too, right? Like, obviously, like, I've used the teams, I've done well with them, so it's like, I'm going to be less critical of my own teams, which is, like, valid. I mean, I'm sure there are other players who have, like, opinions on it too, which I don't mind. And I think that would be better suited for other people to have the opinion on it rather than myself, because like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like, oh yeah, my team's perfect, like obviously I think my teams are good, but like everyone's team works differently for everyone else, so that's why like when I look at someone else's team I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily agree with this. It might work for them just like the way like some things on this team work for me that may not work for other people, but that's just kind of how I look at it. But yeah, so down to this team. This team is utilizing Weavile as well, which I think is cool. Use Feint over Protect first off. Also Hydro Pump. Any team that does not have Hydro Pump, Giga Drain, Ice Beam, Ludicolo is throwing. So you should be running all those moves, always. Also Protect on Ludicolo is really nice. I think it's actually better in Fake Out, personally. And for Pelipper, I do not like Chesto Berry at all. I think Chesto Berry is really a weird set on it. Also not running Tailwind, big like deduction I think for that one in terms of viability. I don't think this team stands out compared to other rain teams. I mean, it's literally doing the Steel Electric rain core, but it's running a suboptimal Ludicolo and a suboptimal Pelipper set, and it's also running a suboptimal Arcanine set in my opinion. Yeah, and not running Feint on Weavile is like definitely not great. Also, the EV spread's a little bit weird. I don't know why you'd ever want to be Brave Scizor. I think that's not good at all. So there are a lot of things on this team I don't particularly like, to be honest, and that I'd probably recommend using another version of the Rain team. All right, Bingju's team. I think he won an event with this team or something. I do like this team in terms of how it utilizes a different version of Scissor than we normally see. Now, at first you guys might be like, oh, well, it's a little weird to run Life Orb on Scissor, but it does power up your X Scissors, which I can appreciate. Also, this Scissor seems to be a lot more offensive. I think that's fine, honestly. I don't have too much of an issue with that, especially because you have like Gyarados to compensate with the bulk. You have Snarl, Raikou. The one thing of note, Leftovers Calm Mind Raikou is really interesting. I would probably be a little bit hesitant, only because you have Hail to kind of counteract it. But that being said, you're not always leading it in tandem, right? Double Intimidate core, really cool. I like that. It gives you a lot of good defensive synergy, and it works really well with the Scizor who wants to set up Swords Dance. Also, Scarf Abomasnow is really cool because you can go for Scarf Icy Wind plus Earthquake. Absolutely ruins so many mons, right? So I really like that combination, and I think that's a really cool thing. White Herb Chomp is like really good. I think it's one of the best sets, honestly. And also too, I like the Abomasnow set a lot. I think being timid, Abomasnow with Icy Wind is actually a really cool use of like dynamic speed, so you can slow things down and outspeed them. Gyarados as well, I think utilizing Crunch is fine. Because you already have ice coverage on Abomasnow, it makes sense to be utilizing Crunch here. So I actually pretty much fully agree with this team. The only thing that I would maybe consider is putting Wide Guard over Quick Guard, but Quick Guard allows like the team to remain more offensive so it can get faked out, so I can still appreciate that. I'm very curious about the Jolly Hitmontop. Personally, I prefer extra bulk, but I do understand the logic of being a bit more, like being fast, because then it lets you get fast close combats and fast fake outs, right? Overall, cool team. I think it's actually really, like, nice. I don't have too much to say about it, in terms of critiquing it. I think it's a unique team, but I think it does what it's supposed to do properly. Okay, I need a second. I'm thinking about this. Okay. You shouldn't use Credilli unless it specifically does something really good for your team, which in this case it does not. So the Stockpile Leech Seed endgame is like cute, but just think about how passive it's going to be on the field next to everything else. And like, if you're going to be doing the Surf plus Storm Drain stuff, like, why not have it so that you're going to at least have another move to capitalize off of the damage output, right? Like, I would probably prefer, like, Giga Drain, Rock Move, Recover, and, like, Protect. I think it gets Ancient Power, at least, if it doesn't get Power Gem. Calm Mind Cresselia is not great, in my opinion. I don't think it's the right way to use Cresselia in this format. I just think it's too passive, and Scizor just absolutely bodies it. You should be Metal Coat on Scizor. I don't think running Lumberry is that great. I mean, Yawn Empoleon's kind of neat. I can get behind that. I think that's okay. That being said, I think that overall, what you might struggle with is pretty much the amount of damage you're able to do, right? Like, I feel like in closed team sheet, Defiant Empoleon's actually optimal over Torrent, because your opponent's going to keep, like, being, like, how is it? Like, you're basically going to, like, make them think that you're Defiant, like, physical with, like, the constant Defiant boost, and, like, you just use special moves, and, like, they're scared to boost you even then, you know what I mean? But if it's not close sheet, then, you know, just being Torrent's optimal. Draco Meteor's Ice Beam, Surf, Tailwind. I mean, I get the idea. I'd probably just go with Protect, honestly, over the Tailwind, and just run Psychic over one of the moves. I know the Surf is for the Credilli. I just feel like it's one of those teams that are, like, it's kind of gimmicky, you know what I mean? Like, I would not recommend this for serious tournament play. And like I said, this isn't a diss on, like, the creators of the team. I just wouldn't recommend this if you're playing this for a serious tournament. If you're playing it for fun, I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, it has, like, the overall basic concepts of, like, any team, right? Like, you have, like, the Steel Dragon core, you have the setup stuff, but, like, I think that this team is going to be really weak to, like, a strong, like, Scizor, basically. I think Scizor gives this team so much trouble if they're able to remove the Arcanine. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. Excuse me. But yeah. I had to, like, think about that for a second. For it, with Follow Me, I mean, it's kind of weird, right? Like, I feel like these two teams have, like, the confirmation bias of, like, the cute, quirky, like, weird Pokemon. Let me check for its bulk before I say anything. Let me check this thing's bulk. Yeah, like, look at this, man. Like, I mean, the Helping Hand is nice, and the Sucker Punch, I guess, is cute, but, like, this is not good bulk, you know? Like, you'd be better off using something like Togekiss as your supporter in this case. There's no reason to use for it. Also, too, I think, like, this, like, basically, this part of the team, all of this is fine. Like, literally none of this is, like, incorrect, I'd say, for the most part, except maybe not running Protect here, right? Also, maybe Ice Beam over Tailwind. I have a problem with this. I don't think Specs Cresselia is good, first off. Or at least, like, not good on this kind of team. Also, I don't think Ferret's good. I think Togekiss here, and I think either you change a Cresselia set, or you just use a different Pokemon there. Even, like, Tyranitar, I think would be good. But, yep. I mean, that's pretty much it for, like, my opinion on it. Okay, here... Huh. Okay. Don't use that Alakazam. Use Life Orb, Magic Guard if you're going to use anything, because Alakazam actually has a really high special attack, and Alakazam can actually do some damage. So I'm not going to say you shouldn't use Alakazam necessarily, because it can like do stuff, right? But if you're going to use Alakazam, you need to like be using its best set, which is going to be the Life Orb offensive set with Magic Guard. You don't get damaged by your Life Orb recoil, which is really nice. And Alakazam actually has a pretty wide move pool. Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, a ton of other things it can do. And actually does a bunch of damage. That's a really high special attack, right? Obviously, weak physical defense, but, you know, you can kind of compensate for that. If you're going to be using Alakazam, however, you need to have really good support around it if you're going to be like a really offensive team. I don't think this team has enough for Scizor besides the Rotom Heat, but if the Rotom Heat gets removed for some reason, Scizor goes kind of nuts here, right? That being said, I mean, obviously every team can have like a perfect matchup, but like even having like Flamethrower and like Babiri Berry on the Togekiss would probably be good. That's what I really liked about that Rain team I saw before. I think that was actually a really cool concept. Drifblim is weird. It was really good when seeds were out. I don't know if it's that great now. It does have a really cool kit, and Citrus Berry Plus Unburden is kind of cool. I'm not totally convinced about it, but I will let it slide because I feel like it's something that like could be good. You know what I mean? So I don't want to like, you know, kind of diss that too much. Ignore that follow alert. That's from like Twitch. I forgot to turn off my Twitch alerts while recording this. But pretty much the Garchomp is okay. I would probably run Life Orb on it. And I would probably make Togekiss Babiri Berry with Flamethrower, Dazzling Gleam, Follow Me, and like filler, right? Gastrodon's okay. I would change Skull to Ice Beam. Alakazam, make that... Oh, maybe you don't know. So you run White Herb on Chomp, and then you run Life Orb on Alakazam, maybe, right? Also, too... I don't know, it just feels like not cohesive as a team. It's really weird. Like, in some regards, it makes sense, but in other regards, it feels like a lot of Pokemon slapped together. I wouldn't recommend using this. Although I do think there are some cool concepts. Drifblim could be cool. Alakazam with, like, Life Orb, I think that's also a really cool concept as well. Probably wouldn't recommend using this, though. Unless you're trying to have fun, then use it. Okay, let's see. Alright, this is bad. Don't do that. Hydro Pump, Giga Drain. Always. Standard Rain team, I don't think it particularly stands out from other Rain teams, to be honest. I mean, I feel like you could have literally any Rain team and it'll always have like the core of like Electric, Scizor, you know, Rain partners. You need something to like stand the team out. I do think Snorlax is like fine with Choice Band on this team, but I feel like there are better options, honestly, to kind of fill out that physical attacker slot. Breloom, I don't think it fits on this team personally. I probably wouldn't use it in tandem with this team because you already have grass coverage, or you should have grass coverage on Ludicolo anyways. But yeah, I'd probably replace Breloom here. And then, you know, I'd probably put him on top. But then if you're going to do that, you'd basically just have Mark as his team. So, you know, it's kind of like that thing with Rain teams. You know what I mean? You'll have the same thing anyways. The really standout Rain teams have, like, some smart variations to them where they kind of fit within that. You know, like, for example, changing the electric type or having something a bit different. Like, the Rain team I used, it was Garchomp Zapdos. So you had, like, the Disquake along with the Rain mode. And then you had Scizor there, which is kind of required, right? And then Arcanine for, like, the Intimidate. And, like, you'll notice, like, the one that I particularly liked that I thought was pretty solid. Where was it? Like this version, I think, had a bit more that I liked than like a lot of the other versions. Also, this version I felt like was pretty solid because it just kind of hit all the standard things for rain. You're pretty much able to utilize like something unique with like the flamethrower Togekiss to break through other scissors without needing a fire type, which kind of goes along with your team a bit better, and it still fits in with everything else. So kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, that's like my main opinion on that particular team. Now, going into the previously featured cool teams, these are old, so I'm going to not criticize these as much, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they are old, right? So I'm not gonna really go into these too much. Use these at your own risk. They are older teams, so they are newer to the format. From what I can see as I'm looking at them, the main ones that look like they'd be okay. This looks fine. I think actually, let me double check this. This shouldn't be that fast though, in my opinion, if you're gonna be Trick Room and Cresselia. Leftovers is fine, I guess. Probably Lumberry on this. This should be White Herb. Probably Babiri on Togekiss. I think Togekiss is actually really decent with Babiri in this format. Then yeah, I mean it's like a pretty standard team, right? But yeah, I wanted to focus on these two because these are the two more recent ones, right? But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I mean these are the main ones I was more so concerned about talking over. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this video useful. I know we took 46 minutes to kind of review it. If you guys have any questions for me, or you guys would like to see more videos like this, or even just like any things that you'd like to see me do in these videos different, or something that, you know, you'd appreciate me kind of going into, make sure to let me know. As always, guys, thank you for watching the videos. I always do my best to kind of give you guys the best informative content and like honest content with Pokemon as I can, obviously within my own opinions, everything. Yeah, make sure to let me know. If you guys are interested in improving your game and working with me, make sure to check out coaching down below, and also make sure to check out the Patreon if you guys would like to support me and these videos, and potentially get, you know, getting access to early teams and getting access to sets for Pokemon. Not potentially, that's what happens on the Patreon. So yeah, thank you guys again. I incredibly appreciate it, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.